Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort. It is Thursday, about 6:15 a.m. Getting a bit of a late start today. Was tired last night. Yeah. And today's episode is going to be a little different because the question I got asked today is a long one. It's a long one. Someone on my stream, I think it was Sunday, was sort of like, hey, could you give me your thoughts on the industry as somebody who's newly going into it? And I talked for a little bit, but I was on stream, so I can only answer questions so in detail when I'm on stream. And then one of my mods was like, hey, don't stop, keep answering the question. What are your general thoughts on the state of the industry right now? And so I'm not one to back down from a question, so let's answer that question. Now, I do have to preface this with everything. If somehow this video gets out there, everything I say here is just my personal opinion, my observations, and they do not represent the opinions of my employer, etc., etc. Because again, these are just my opinions as somebody who's been watching and doing and whatever I've been in the industry for more than 20 years and watching the industry for more than 35. So, yeah. Okay. So, here's the biggest problem with the industry right now. And it's funny because a lot of YouTubers will talk about it, but they don't really dive into it correctly. Let's take a game like Elden Ring. Okay. Elden Ring, very good game. People love it. Won awards, yada, yada, yada. Great game, right? Team should be proud. That game sold, I think, less than this number, but we're going to use this number to illustrate the point. Let's say it sold 20 million copies. Now, like I said, I think it's a little less than that, but let's say it's 20 million. And again, it's not going to change the point that much. 20 million copies at $60 a piece. That is $1.2 billion. That's a pretty successful game, right? Right? Well, here's the problem. A lot of the way the industry is run at the top is not run by creatives. It's not run by game designers or producers or anything like that. It's run by business people, business investments, okay? And so you have to think about these terms, not in terms of like, what's a good game, but in terms of what's a good business investment, okay? So making $1.2 billion on your investment, not bad. Not bad at all. But it could be better. And you're like, well, how? How could it be better than a game that sold 20 million copies? Well, here's the thing. If you look at the industry in the last 15 years, what are the actual big money makers? The big money makers. I'll use one that I think is a pretty good example. Genshin Impact. If you look up Genshin Impact and ask, how much money does Genshin Impact make each year? Well, when I looked it up, it was about $2 billion per year, every year. And Genshin's been out, 4 or 5 years? So what, that's $8 billion? $2 billion a year? And it's going to keep going, right? Like, unlike Elden Ring, which comes out, makes its money, and is done, Genshin Impact is essentially a money printing machine where every year it makes $2 billion. And the actual cost of invention is pretty low. That's what the business people are after. Imagine if you could invest a bunch of money and your return is essentially a business, a constant money-making machine that will make you $2 billion every year. That's the goal. And so that's why what you saw for like the last 5 to 10 years was this giant push from all these essentially business-run people going, we need that, right? And so everyone is trying to make their $1 billion a year money printer. That's the goal. And so oftentimes when you're in these rooms or talking about future projects, the people at the top, your CEOs and whatever, are going, well, how is this game going to make $1 billion a year? Now, let's take this a step further, okay? I know a lot of people look at Concord and they're like, Concord is the biggest failure in the industry of all time, right? Like, they spent 6 years on it, and it was like $300 million, I think it was. And they spent $300 million, and the game died instantly. And again, a lot of the people in the game industry, the designers, the players, whatever, are going, that's terrible. You know what the business investment person is going? No big deal. Because here's the thing. Let's say you're Sony, you're this like multi-billion dollar company, and you made 10 bets, 10 big bets, each costing you $300 million, okay? If just one of those 3 bets becomes a Genshin Impact, just one, right? The other 9 can fail and cost you $2.7 billion, but if one of them becomes a Genshin Impact and is making $2 billion a year, you made your money back and more. And like, that's how investments are thought about. In the people at the top who actually, start these startups and invest the money, that's how, especially in the Western market, that's how they look at game development. It's not about innovating. It's not about creating new things or delivering player experiences. It's a space to invest. Hollywood has actually gone through the same thing. I was just watching the movie Major Pain last night thinking about this because it was free on YouTube, and I love that movie, and it's a silly movie. There's a whole bunch of political commentary, whatever. It's a fun movie. And I was like, they don't make movies like this anymore. Well, yeah, you know why? Because no one wants to invest $50 million to make $100 million. That's not how investors think anymore. Investors want to invest $400 million to make $2 billion, right? Like, all of the goals, the KPIs and things like that, all these business terms that I never heard at Nintendo, but I hear all the time at Western companies, that's their goal, is how do we turn this into a big, big return on investment? And so I want you to imagine you're working at a company like Blizzard, and they spend, we'll say, $40 million on like 10 canceled R&D projects. Doesn't matter. As long as one of them turns into the next WoW, that's what they're after. And so anything short of that is deemed a failure in the Western market. And so that's why you saw this big push, right? Like, let's take Rocksteady, right? Where it's like, okay, we make these Arkham games, and they do okay, but they're not a big return on investment. And so then they try to make, what was it? I forget the name of it now, but the Suicide Squad, whatever. That's what they were going for. They're like, if this can be successful, we can have our Genshin Impact, our Fortnite, our money printer. And it wasn't, so okay. But now here's the thing. When investors are looking at this, they are looking at it in terms of return on profits. They're not looking at it in terms of the impact it has to everything else, right? So to them, if they, again, let's say they did their 10 $300 billion failures, one succeeds, but the side effect of that is 9 companies that spent these 6 years on these $300 million games, well, they go under, right? And now all of a sudden you have people who are jobless and whatever. And again, this isn't just a games industry thing. Hollywood's going through the same thing. That's all it is, right? Like, unfortunately, the Western market is run by people who are just trying to get a return on investment. Now, the Eastern market is a little different. It depends on the culture, right? Like China, for example, does it a little differently. They do like a shotgun approach. They will be like, how many games can we make quickly? And if the game, let's say, I'll use fake numbers here, but let's say they spend $40 million real quick. That's even too high for China. Let's say $20 million. $20 million to make a game in a year or two, ship it, see how it does. And if it does well or does poorly, they cancel it. No big deal, right? So you see a high volume of game releases in a region like China. But if the game does well, that's when all of a sudden they'll take all these small teams that got these games going and then quick throw it at them. Grow, 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 grow. And so their strategy is to sort of like just fire a lot. And so what you end up with in a region like China is there are a lot of games, but a lot of them are like mediocre or they're reskins of the same thing, where it's like they'll have a core gotcha game and that one won't do well. So they'll try with a different IP. Same game, just different IP. Does that one do well? No. Okay. Let's try a different IP and clean up the menu. They'll release that one. Did that do well? Oh, it did? Okay, great. Now get more developers on it. Get more updates, more updates, more updates. Grow, grow, grow. You know, we found our money printing machine. Go. And like, that's their strategy. And it works because the motivation there is to find that game and to benefit off that. Because again, the incentive here is profit and success. Profit and success. And so, yeah. Now, it feels like the one region that is mostly immune to this, and it's funny because this is timely, since State of Play just came out yesterday, is Japan. Japan seems to be sort of immune to this, and maybe this is my Nintendo bias showing, but Nintendo seems more about like building a reputation and building honor and building a brand and things like that. And so you see them make a lot more pushes towards quality and not necessarily these giant investments. I'm not sure Japanese culture really values, the billions and billions quite like the investors in the other regions. And so that's why I think for Japan, a lot of it is like building your reputation as a game creator or a game studio. This is why nobody gets fired or leaves Nintendo. It's like, you worked there for a long time and you're proud of it. So Japanese culture seems to be the one exception. And again, you look at the games coming out of State of Play, and I think that's why you just kind of get like good games. But the funny thing is, if you view it in the lens of the investor, will any of those games be viewed as successful to an investor? Probably not, right? Like, I know everyone in the fighting game community is freaking out about the new Marvel game, which looks amazing, by the way. The Marvel 4v4, right? And for a gamer, that's so good. It's like you got this awesome mech Iron Man. That's sick. 4v4. Can't wait to see how those controls work. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. That game's going to sell, at best, 4 million copies. Probably less, but at best. And as a gamer, you're like, who cares? That's great. But that's the thing. The industry is not run by gamers. It's run by investors. It's run by business people. And that's, I will say, the biggest culture shock I had going from Nintendo to Riot is that you're not dealing with creatives, right? Like, I was meeting with people like Tanabe and Iwata who were very much the like, let's just make it the good game. At Nintendo, your goal, hilariously enough, Nintendo had this strategy where as long as your game sold 1 million copies, good job. You built the brand up. You made enough to be sustainable for a while, right? Like at NST, the company, the division I worked at, our best game that during the time I was there was Mario vs. Donkey Kong 2 Mini Land Mayhem. And it sold about, I want to say 2 million copies. It was like 2 or 3. So not a gangbuster, but like it did good. And so that made, the company $60 million, I think it was, again, 2 times 30. It was a $30 game. But NST only cost about 4 to 5 million to operate per year. And so just that one game was sort of enough to sustain the company for like 10 years. Good stuff. And Nintendo gets another game in their library so that they have a rich, diverse copy of games, and people look at their brand and go, wow, they have a lot of games. And that was their strategy, because not every game we did sold that many, right? I think Minis on the Move only sold like 100,000 or 200,000 copies. And so it wouldn't have been a profit, but we didn't have to worry about being shut down because we were doing okay, you know? But we were also releasing like a game every year and a half. Like our game volume was good. I worry about a company like, say, Retro, where they released Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Country Returns and Frozen whatever. I forget the title, Frozen thing. And, they made some good money off that because those sold well. And then what, 10 years have passed? And Metroid Prime 4 is not out yet? They haven't been making much money, Now, the good news for them is they kind of cheated and got lucky, where they could just re-release different versions, like the Switch versions of the games and the 3DS versions of the games. And so I think they floated off the Donkey Kong games pretty well for a long time. But who knows how long that lasts, But that's the thing. That's because Nintendo has this sort of slow burn approach. They're not looking for the instant $10 billion money printer that they can get out of. Fast forward to, again, like, I'll use the Rocksteady example or whatever, the Suicide Squad. It's like they clearly went all in on that. Or, the other one that's in the news right now is like Bungie. Bungie is going all in on Marathon, right? They're hiring whatever. And if Marathon is unsuccessful, they're out however many millions of dollars. But again, if you're Sony, right? If you're Sony, who bought up all these companies and asked them to make these bets, right? Like, again, if we look at Concord and we look at Marathon or whatever, and Sony is essentially doing what I talked about at the beginning, right? These are these $300 million bets to try to make your own Genshin, to try to make your own $1 billion a year money printer, because that's what they want. And I know it's weird to say because Sony is a Japanese company, so there's a little bit of contradiction there. I get that. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not like super familiar with every company's policies and every company's CEO's motivations. I don't know all that. But what I can tell you for sure is that the primary, 95% of the money in this industry, that's the motivation. The motivation is to find those $1 billion money printers. And it's scary because gone are the days of like, you go back to like the year 2000, right? And we look at games like Enter the Matrix. I'm going to use that example. It's like a movie tie-in. Like that game probably cost maybe $5 to $10 million to make. Let's exaggerate because who knows, a movie tie-in, licenses, whatever. Maybe it cost $25 million to make. That's fine. They made it. Sold, I think, probably 2 million copies because it was a movie tie-in. It was a mediocre to bad game. And they made 120 million, If we assume 2 million copies at $60 a pop, hell, we'll just undershoot it 4x return on investment. Not bad. Not bad, but that's just not enough for people anymore. And I could keep listing examples, but gone are the days of a like small bet. Most companies nowadays, because they're run by these investors and these business folks, they're not looking for long-term bets. Again, Nintendo was all about building your brand over time and having the system, like their way to win the system wars was we are going to have the console with a lot of games that people are going to want to play. And, if we have 500 games in our catalog and everyone out there likes 10 of them, we sell a lot of consoles, and we become a name brand. And it paid off for them, right? Because like now they have theme parks and movies and Mario. Like that's how you build a brand. But again, that's not what a lot of people in the industry right now are looking for. They're not looking to build a brand. They're looking for these instant wins so they can cash out, right? And let's pick on Minecraft for a little bit here. Notch made Minecraft by himself, made, some ungodly amount of money by selling it, 2 billion or something like that. And Minecraft is, again, one of these $1 billion a year money printers. That guy's never going to make another video game. He's going to enjoy it, right? He wasn't interested in building a brand. This wasn't a long-term thing for him. It was just like, and that's how a lot of people are, right? Like, and then there's the, the smaller thing, right? So definitely indies are like, okay, cool. What about indies? Indies are where you can still, now, the challenge with indies, and this has always been true, this is still true, is that unless you have funding, it's going to be hard, right? Like no one can be like, my 9 to 5 is building an indie game. You're not going to make much money. It's not a sustainable career. It's a great hobby, right? And when you do it right, like a hobby, you end up with Balatro, right? Like Balatro is a great example of like one guy did it for fun. It sold a gajillion, like what, 1 or 2 million copies, but it's one guy. He made his bank. That's awesome. That's really awesome, right? The game's amazing. But again, if you're an investor, you're not going to invest in someone like that. No one's going to, like, let's say I wanted to go out and make my own startup and I'm like, hey, I'm going to make my own company, 5 people, and we're just going to make small games. And every year we're only going to spend $500,000. So games only cost like $1 to $2 million. We're going to release these games. And our hope is that one of them sells 100,000 copies so that we get our money back and we sustain. If you're an investor, you're looking at that and going, well, what's my motivation here? Why would I fund that company? That's not what I want. So instead, the investor, again, is going to go to the small company and go, okay, but what if instead you spent 4 years and made it like this so that every year you can make it, and that's the scary thing. Now, there's other tricks as well, by the way, like going back to Elden Ring. One of the things that I forget the name of the company and I shouldn't, but the company that makes Demon Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne, all that, one of the things they do really, really well is that every time they make a new game, they're not making it from scratch. That would be suicide. That would cost a whole lot more. Instead, they have been using that same sort of engine and world building expertise to level up the next game, right? And so for them, a game is not about like spending $100 million to make one game. It's about spending $100 million to make 6 games, 7 games. And obviously you're leveling it up as you go. But from a weird perspective, Dark Souls, Demon Souls, Elden Ring, Bloodborne is actually a live service game built around the engine, right? And each of those is an expansion pack in that same engine, which is clever. That's what you should do, right? Like Nintendo did that as well. That's what, the 2 Zeldas, Breath of the Wild, take that engine, improve it, make another game. And this goes back all the way to frickin', I want to say 1997. You build Ocarina of Time. Back then, it costs a lot for that time. Then you make another one in the same engine. You make Majora's Mask. Really good return on investment. And again, I hate even, like, I've been talking about this for 23 minutes now. And, you're hearing me say things like investment and stuff. I do not think like this. This is just years of learning how people think, because these are the people that you have to understand their motivations, because they're the ones signing the paycheck. They're the one approving the projects, right? If I had a really fun night, like, you guys have heard me say, I want to make my Metroidvania, right? In today's time, because best case scenario, I make my Metroidvania. We do it really efficiently. Let's say 10 people, and we finish it in 2 years. So you're probably talking, we'll say 3 million. We'll just over exaggerate and say it costs $3 million to make this. Probably less, but let's just over exaggerate. And best case scenario, if you look at all the Metroidvanias out there, even like your Hollow Knights and stuff, you sell 5 million copies at $30 a pop, 150 million. And again, every normal human being who hears that is going, spend 3 million, make 150 million. That sounds like a pretty good deal, right? Every normal human being is going, that should be an amazing success. But every business investor out there, your Shark Tanks of your world are going, no, that's nothing. That's absolutely nothing. That's like, it's fine. It's okay. But it's just a blip in the bucket, if you've ever watched Shark Tank, again, for them, it's literally, they make lots of bets, right? Like, I'll invest $1 million here, $1 million here, $1 million here, in the hopes that one of them turns into a giant $1 billion thing and is their next Sponge Daddy, and they're just raking it in. Like, that's all investment is having the money to take lots of shots. But the thing is, for all of us people the layer below, we're all just cogs in that investor's ability to take shots. And that's the industry right now. And so if you're like, I want to become someone in the game industry, you have to realize you're either a part of that machine where you're going to join a company, realize that you're part of their trying to make $1 billion money printing machine, right? Like, let's say you go work at 343. It's like you're just part of the cog that's making a Halo game, and their hope is that Halo's going to turn into a money printer, and if it doesn't, you might be out of a job. Or you have to somehow go, well, I'm actually going to be one of the ones who runs the thing, but somehow you need funding, and you're going to have to go to these investors to get it to work anyway. And like, that's the industry right now. Nobody wants to hear about your silly idea that might be a really fun game, or nobody wants to hear about your innovation in game mechanics, because that's not what motivates this industry right now. This industry got too big and is now all about finding the success that makes them the $1 billion money printer. Everyone wants to be the next Genshin, the next Minecraft, the next Fortnite, the next Roblox, the next League of Legends. You look at those big ones, and it's funny, if you look outside the US, you'll find more of these, right? Your King of Glories in China, but not that many people actually nowadays want to be your Nintendo, right? Because as much as like Mario Kart 8 is a success and sold, 30 million copies or some insane amount, that's just not what the current people who run the money in the industry are after. And that's why this is a tough industry. And so I will say it's definitely demoralizing. Now, I have ended up in a pretty lucky situation myself, right? I'm one of the lead designers on a game that is doing quite well, not Fortnite, Minecraft levels, but like doing well enough that the return on investment for keeping us around is quite good, which is great. And because of that, I get to make the game in cool ways and add things that I think are better for the game, and I get to focus on making game fun. But again, we always talked about it, right? Like during set 3, there was a world where that investment wasn't coming back. Like, you go all the way back to like our set 1, set 2 numbers, and it's like, we had the play hours. People were playing the game, but it didn't matter because the money wasn't coming in, And so if the money's not coming in, the investors aren't happy, and what's the point? Nobody cares if you have your Steam chart says 10 million players or whatever. Again, fake numbers. But if it's not building extra revenue, who cares? Who cares? And again, it sucks, but it is the way it is. That's the industry right now. And that's why, and I think what happened is so many games, we're on the tail end of this cycle. We're on the tail end of so many games trying to be this $1 billion money printer, and so many of them failing. And again, you see all these YouTubers that are like, see, live service failed. That'll mean they'll stop trying and they'll go back to single player games. This will prove it. We'll get more single player games. And the sad truth is, as logical and correct as that seems, it won't. It won't. You're not going to see a lot of these companies start going, well, single player games is the way. And I think, what was it, Expedition 33 just came out? And again, same thing, like Expedition 33 is going to win Game of the Year, and it's going to get all these awards, and people are going to say they're going to love it. And then you see these YouTubers who are like, this is going to change the industry. No, it won't at all. It's sad, but it won't. Because Expedition 33, I think they just announced they sold 3.3 million copies. Let's exaggerate it and say it sold 5 million copies. 5 million copies, $40 a pop. 200 million. Cool. Really, really good for them. Every investor is sort of looking at that going, meh, meh, could be better. And that's the dark secret of the industry right now. So, yeah. So, on that note, there you go. I told you it was going to be a long video. I talked about this for 30 minutes. Hopefully this doesn't blow up into some weird thing. I swear to God, if I ever see Asmongold watching my walk video, I will blow my brains out. Okay, not really, but this is for you guys. This isn't meant to be a weird thing. And also, saying stuff like this, by the way, is how, I don't know. Maybe I'll get fired in a week. That would not be funny. Yeah. So, there you go. The good news is, like I said, I still get to go make games, so I'm okay with it for now. I mean, I'm not, but yeah. Okay. It is Thursday. I got work to do. I am going to end this video. Hopefully you found this insightful and not too depressing. But yeah, it is what it is. So, yeah, tomorrow night I get to go to the Magic pre-release. So that'll be fun. I have not really played Magic that deeply in a long time. So this will be fun. Okay, cool. I'm going to wrap it up there. That's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.